Thank you everyone for coming along. My name is Professor Michael Dejuani. I am a researcher in digital media and learning at QUT in Brisbane, and I'm also a chief investigator in the ARC Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child, and it's that centre that's hosting this event this evening. And I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and acknowledge that the Turrbal and Yagara are the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands, and we pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning, and QUT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people continue to play in the QUT community. And in addition, I would just like to acknowledge that these remain unceded territories, and would like to invite you to just recognise the traditional owners where you're joining us from this evening in your own way. So it's really very exciting to have you all here this evening for our event. For those of you who don't know, the ARC Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child is a very large national research centre that is headquartered at QUT in Brisbane, but has partnerships with 5 other universities around the country. And so there's a whole host of researchers right from around Australia who are focusing on digital childhoods. And then in fact, we have a very substantial number of international partners in the centre as well. So in all, we have around 100 or so researchers currently, 100 plus researchers who are undertaking research into digital childhoods here in Australia, which is really exciting. And as part of what we do in the centre, we very much partner with industry colleagues and organisations as well. And one of those organisations is the Smith family. So we're hosting this series of industry insights events, and when we had the opportunity to have an event for International Children's Week, we thought that it would be really wonderful to highlight the work that one of our key partners, the Smith family, does in this space. Last week was also Get Online Week with a focus on digital inclusion. So it's another reason why it's very appropriate to have the Smith family with us this evening, and in particular represented by Wendy Field. And so I'm going to just introduce Wendy briefly, and then she's going to talk for about 20 minutes or so. Then I'm going to ask Wendy some questions in a kind of in conversation sort of mode for probably around 15 minutes or so. And then we'll open up to questions from all of you as well. And just before I introduce Wendy as well, I'd like to thank you for joining us on what is budget night. And fingers crossed that there might be something in the budget for digital inclusion as well. So Wendy Field is Head of Policy Programs and Strategy with the Smith family, where she has responsibility for program design, implementation support and data and digital transformation as part of her broad portfolio. And prior to joining the Smith family, she held a number of leadership roles across a variety of policy and program areas in the Australian government. Wendy is passionate about driving systems change and demonstrating impact, and has driven this focus in her many years working in leadership roles across the community sector, policy and advocacy organisations, and public service sectors at state and Commonwealth government levels. And so I'd like to invite Wendy now to present for us. So thanks, Wendy. I'll pass over to you.
Thanks so much, Michael, and I'll share my screen in a moment, but I want to say thanks for the opportunity to talk about the important work of digital inclusion, and it's brilliant that we're able to do that in National Children's Week. I am on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm here in central Sydney, close to Darling Harbour, and I acknowledge the ongoing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to these lands and waters over many thousands of years. And like you, Michael, acknowledge that these lands are unceded, and we continue to be grateful for the welcome that we get every day from Aboriginal people to these lands. So I will share my screen. Does that look okay, or are you seeing a funny version of this?
Oh, it's just not in presentation mode yet. I think it's getting there.
I get it into presentation mode for some reason.
Well, that's fine. I think we can see it well enough if you just want to click on the slides on the left. Yeah.
Thanks. I'll kick us off. So as I said, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present this evening. I'm going to talk a bit about the Smith family, just to give you a bit of context on who we are and our work. And then I'll talk about our work, particularly in digital inclusion. So the Smith family is a national children's charity. We're 100 years old this year, and obviously a lot has changed in the 100 years since we were founded. Australia's obviously changed, education has changed, and the Smith family has adapted our approach in response to that. Our belief is in a world where every child has the opportunity to determine their future, no matter what their circumstances. What we know is that Australian families might be pushed into poverty through sudden changes in their lives, like serious illness or disability or job loss. And those changes in circumstances, combined with things like currently the rising cost of living, means that many families are really struggling to make ends meet. And when they're faced with financial difficulties, it makes it harder for families to afford essentials, and that children's education can suffer because of those things. So our purpose, which you'll see in the centre there, is to help young Australians to overcome educational inequality caused by poverty. And our belief is a really simple one, and I'm sure it's shared by you, that education truly has the power to transform young lives. So just in terms of our reach currently, we currently have about 60,000 children and young people on our Learning for Life scholarship program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And our reach broadly is about 220,000 participants in the range of programs that we run through partner schools in the main. We're in 91 communities around Australia, and we were established in 1922 by a group of businessmen. And that sort of business community connection still underpins the work that we do here. This is our Learning for Life scholarship approach. We implement a range of programs in community, including a number of initiatives funded by the federal government, like Communities for Children or financial literacy programs. But at the heart of our organization is our Learning for Life program. And the fundamentals of that are a small financial scholarship each year to help families to pay for school essentials. So things like uniforms, books, excursions, musical instruments. And every family is linked to a family partnership coordinator. And their job is to be the link in the service system for families, to be the point of contact if families are struggling with anything to do with their child's schooling, and the range of those things can be very broad. So our aim is to link families to the support that they need at the point in time that they need it. And then practical support through access to a range of additional learning and mentoring programs. And they are delivered through our partner schools in the main. And we work with about 700 partner schools across the country. So one of the key things about Learning for Life is that it's long-term support. So students can start on the scholarship in the first year of primary school and continue all the way through to tertiary. We form an agreement with our families. We ask them to commit to their child attending school and, where relevant, participating in our wraparound programs. And our aim is to underpin them with the support to enable them to do that and overcome the inevitable challenges that hit the lives of people who live in poverty. So you'll see the range of programs that we implement there. They are broadly scaffolding literacy and numeracy. They are around digital access and digital capability building, financial capability building, and career-focused initiatives. So we are pretty clear about where our strengths lie, and our aim is to partner with other organisations in the community for those areas of support or need that our families might have that we don't cover. So it's a long-term approach, which is unusual in support for disadvantaged families. So we have recently redrawn our 5-year strategy, and the intent of the 5-year strategy, we've set a pretty bold ambition to deepen our impact and broaden our reach. So we've done some analysis of the level of demand and need in the communities that we work in already. And our ambition across the next 5 years is to expand the scholarship program to 100,000 students. And we want to expand our program reach to a more modest 250,000 students participating in our programs, and an ambition for 100% digital inclusion. So we want every child on our program to be digitally included, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that involves as I go through this little talk. So this is our strategy on a page, and it's just a summary of broadly what I talked about there. It sort of sets out the intent and has a strong focus on measuring our outcomes across time. So we measure longitudinally student attendance at school, advancement to year 12, what they're doing a year after they leave the program, and now actually 3 years after they leave the program, and then their tertiary continuation and achievement. You'll see there how that's sort of set out. So we really want to expand our digital inclusion approach, and we have an ambition to make sure, as I said, that every child is digitally included, and that's based on the strong evidence that we've seen about the impact of not being digitally included. That's all underpinned by our commitments to be a child-safe organisation, and that really informs our approach to both digital inclusion and our programme implementation more broadly. We're really conscious of the need to ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have the same opportunities as the broader population. So 25% of the students that we support on our Learning for Life programme are of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander background, and really wanting to embrace diversity and inclusion. And a new goal for us, I think, determined by the world as it stands at the moment, is around improving our environmental sustainability. And we're keen to build that into our digital inclusion approach. So a little bit about now moving on to the work in bridging the digital divide. So I'm going to talk a bit about COVID, I think, because it really brought so many issues that we had known about for some time into stark relief. It really accelerated the way that we use technology in our everyday life. So from education to health and working remotely. And what we know also is that those with lower levels of income struggle with having the same amount of access to devices internet and digital skills. We really feel that being digitally included is no longer a luxury, but it's really a key component of being able to participate equally, and particularly so in education. I probably don't need to tell this group that the Australian Digital Inclusion Index shows that while rates of digital inclusion have been slowly improving over time, there remains a substantial digital divide in Australia. And we hear regularly and we see through the data that for low-income families with school-age children, affordability is the most significant barrier to digital inclusion. So COVID has really increased our use of internet data, but for low-income households, the proportion of their income spent on internet access has been increasing. We know that often those from low-income households rely on mobile data, which is often more expensive, and they try to cobble together plans to the best extent that they can. We hear regularly from our families that they're not able to participate, or their children are not able to engage because they've run out of mobile data. Mobile-only data users also have an Australian Digital Inclusion Index score, which is much lower than the national average. And what we also know is that digital literacy is increasingly, or digital capability is increasingly an essential skill for those looking for employment, and is linked to higher earning potential. While the range of digital skills that you need for roles will vary, we know also that 87% of jobs in Australia now require digital skills. And it's expected that 1 in 4 jobs created by 2025 will be for digital technology workers. So helping children to be digitally included is not only important for their education now, but will be really pivotal to gaining employment in their future. And we really want children from low SES backgrounds to have the same opportunities as their more advantaged peers. So, the opportunity, I suppose, to be a creator rather than just a consumer of content. So moving on then to talk a little bit more about digital inclusion at the Smith family. We've been on the journey of thinking about digital inclusion for quite some time. So probably it's about 12 or 13 years. We started with a program called Tech Pros, which provided a refurbed computer, 12 months of dongle access to families, and access to in-community digital skills training. We've continued to grow and develop that offering to our families, but it has been highly contingent on us being able to generate the funds to do that. And it was one of the first things that dropped off our agenda in the event that our fundraising wasn't able to support that ambition. But I think, as I said, the world has changed and we need to change our support to students and families to reflect that. So, and it was really clear during COVID that remote learning periods were a real challenge for families, and we needed to step in and provide greater numbers of devices to our students. So across the period of lockdowns, we, with the support of many partners, provided over 5,200 devices to households on Learning for Life. And as part of our new 5-year strategy, when we were doing the planning for this, we broadened our thinking to digital inclusion and really aligning with the Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance's definition of digital inclusion to incorporate access, affordability, and digital ability. And as I said, our aim is by the end of the 5 years that all 100,000 Learning for Life students are digitally included. We also have a strong focus on digital capability building. And actually that was where I first met Michael, when we were setting up the the framework for thinking about how we could build digital capability building programs. So one of the, a number of the programs that we offer through our schools are a Tech Pros program, which is a sort of supported program for children and young people to engage in projects, small projects that develop digital capability. Young ICT Explorers, which we implement in partnership with SAP. Catch-up Learning, which is an online tutoring program, which is completely delivered online with support from a qualified teacher. iTrack, which is an online mentoring program, which we've had in place for some time. And our student-to-student digital offering, which is a peer-to-peer reading program, where students who are struggling with their reading are paired with a more able reader and they read graded books online. So we're really wanting, through both engagement with our families and our students, through increasingly digitized programs and processes, to increase their digital engagement and their digital competency building. And obviously that's a sort of a two-way process as we go through the journey of digital capability building. So I'll talk a little bit now about what we learned through COVID. So the first point there around digital disadvantage. So the most stark feedback we immediately got from families was around lack of access to devices and lack of access to, parents not feeling confident about being able to support their children. That was, I think, pretty obvious. We knew what it looked like and we responded fairly quickly. We were really keen to stay engaged with families as we went through the journey. And at the peak of the restrictions there, you can see that we broadly transitioned online. So our families had various experiences of this. So things like, they were seeing, in some instances, increased comfort and convenience. So for some, it's been a bit eye-opening. One grandmother said her son had helped her to set up with the bills to come through her phone. Now she no longer has to line up at the post office to pay her bills. She still struggles to become, she's become more comfortable with doing things on her phone. However, she still struggles with the laptop. So her quote was, "It took me half an hour to get a blank page up on the laptop so Sarah, who's 6, could practice her typing." And access is really just the beginning. For others, it continues to be a cause of tension. One mother who received a digital access pack from us expressed that she still prefers to do paper-based activities with the children. And that's been expressed by a number of families, that paper-based has been easier to handle because they're not tech savvy, and neither of my children. And one mother said that she kept that knowledge out of her house for as long as she could. For some families, things haven't changed. One mum said that she'd been studying online for 2 years and enjoys tech-related activities. The main need for her was to get more devices, which she did with help from her school. For families with older children, they've seen their children become quite self-directed and be able to handle online learning well. And for some students who struggle with classroom engagement, the online learning process was actually really helpful for them. So parents saying, "I just let him do his thing. There were initial issues with logging in, but it's all fine. I trust he's doing what he needs to do." Other families have increased their use of social media and stay in touch with family and friends, or use the school's Facebook page to contact teachers and other parents. And a facet of the way schools are working now is that they are increasingly engaging with parents and sending out education-related information digitally. So I think, as I said, the impact of COVID was that it really brought into more stark relief some of the issues that have been around for quite a long time, and families engaged with it in different ways. We did get a huge amount of feedback about spaces to work and finding time to juggle the challenge of having children learning online with the need to run a household, and quite chaotic households quite often. So for the Smith family, thinking about providing digital support to students, as I said, our view is that it really increases their ability to participate fully in education. And it also allows families to become more connected to their school community and improve educational outcomes for students. Our definition of digital inclusion, and this is fairly broad, is that students have, and this is individual students rather than households, have access to a device that can be used for educational purposes, that this device is connected to the internet and the family has sufficient internet to meet their household needs, and that the family feels they have the digital skills or are offered numerous avenues to strengthen their digital skills. And when we think about digital skills, we're talking about we include online safety and knowing how to set up a safe environment for children. And a big part of what we offer is tech support to families, particularly in the early stages. We just know that they wouldn't be able to engage without that support. What we're also learning, unfortunately, is that there's no cookie cutter approach. So every family's needs are different, and that not every student will need all of the components of digital inclusion that we've set out there. So our ambition is to tailor our approach based on the needs of each student and family. And as we develop the digital inclusion strategy, we want to try to find ways to offer choice to our families. So we know that schools have certain requirements for types of devices or standard of devices. So trying to make sure that we are in a position to be able to meet those needs where relevant. And we really want to make sure that the voices of our students and our families are driving the way that we roll out or implement our digital inclusion approach. Just, an example of one family is around, ensuring that children can participate in high school education in a way that's equal to their peers. And that's why the strategy is so important. Our family partnership coordinators are at the moment having transition conversations with families where there's a child moving from primary to high school next year. So we recently had a family call us who have 3 children who are going into high school next year. The family's been told that it's all digital learning. So in our next round of delivery of laptops, we'll be prioritizing those with a student moving into high school to ensure they have a device before school commences next year. So the family in need of the 3 laptops that I just mentioned will be receiving that device before Christmas. So I'll move on now to talk about how we're working. So we're partnering with a range of other organizations to help us with this approach. It's pretty fundamental to the way the Smith family works. We see that everybody has a role to play in addressing educational inequities for disadvantaged children. And we work with other corporates and not-for-profit organizations to support the delivery of laptops to families. And we work closely with Optus to deliver Donate Your Data. And we already have 23,000 students who participate in Donate Your Data and are looking to grow this number. And we're in discussion with Optus about the next round of Donate Your Data. So those students receive up to 40 gigs of data a month. And we monitor and get feedback from families about the benefits or how that data is used to benefit their children's education. But we really believe that digital inclusion is an issue that's beyond just the Smith family, and we need a broader advocacy to support all students across Australia. And I'll just finish off with Vanessa's story. I won't read it out. I'll leave it on screen for you to read there. But Vanessa is one of our Learning for Life grandparents who's a carer for her grandchildren. And that's, you know, I could quote thousands of pieces of feedback from families about the difference that it's made to have access to a device and internet. So I will stop sharing, Michael.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was just such a wonderful overview of the work of the Smith family. And I think, you know, I'm just always so incredibly blown away by the amazing work that the Smith family does as an organisation and the pivotal role that it plays in addressing inequality in Australian education. I don't think there's any other single organisation in the country that does it in the way that the Smith family does. So thank you again for the amazing work that you do, and I hope you're here for another 100 years because we need you. We absolutely need you.